Hi, welcome to Just Ask Sherry. And this is going to be a little bit more of a continuing saga of how I got to be obese and spent most of my life being obese, the pitfalls, and getting to where I am today at 122 pounds, and hoping that I can help you get to that point as well. Growing up in a family that everything surrounded by food, I guess my parents both grew up, relatively poor. Maybe they didn't have a lot to eat. I know my mother's family stood on bread lines. My grandfather died very young and they were left with nothing, and they really, they didn't have anything. So food was an integral part of her life when she got older and could afford to feed themselves. And my father had one of those families where his parents wouldn't let him leave the table until he finished everything on his plate. And even the things he hated, he had to sit and eat. So it was a big resentment for him. So when he got older, he only ate what he wanted to eat. And those were all unhealthy foods. And so I can remember being a kid and eating 3 ice creams in one day. Who allows their kid to eat 3 ice creams in one day when they're overweight? I mean, it's one thing when you have a kid that's skinny and it doesn't matter maybe and whatever. And, that I guess it's not a big deal. But in my house, I was really heavy. And I ate 3 ice creams in one day. Or I can remember being an adult already. I was living out of the house, and my mother, and may she rest in peace, and she was really a wonderful woman, but she had made veal cutlets fried in Crisco and mashed potatoes with chicken fat and a can of corn. And then she looked at me and she said, "Oh my gosh, your backside is the side of a barn." And I remember being quite stunned by the comment. And she was really a very loving woman and a very giving woman. And it wasn't, my mother was by no means an abusive woman or an emotionally abusive woman. She was so loving, but it must have caught her so off guard that here she was serving me this meal, but I was fatter than I had ever been in my whole life. It was when I was 23. I had put on 35 pounds in 3 months. I had been working on my own in a building. I had started a business with somebody, but I had this building all to myself, and there was all the other people in the building were salespeople out of the building. I was an inside salesperson in the building, and I was bored. So here's what my diet consisted of. In those few months that I was alone in this building, I would stop in the morning and I would get myself, I have to really remember because this is a long time ago. I'm 67 now, I was 23 then. And I would stop in the morning and I would go to, I think it was either McDonald's or Burger King, and I would get 2 Egg McMuffins and 2 hash browns. And I would come to work and polish those off in no time. And then in between breakfast and lunch, I would have a couple of candy bars. I like those $100,000, I think they were called $100,000 bars. Now they're probably called $1 million bars, but whatever. And then at lunchtime, I would go out to Burger King and I would buy 2, I think it was Burger, I don't remember these, I don't go to any of these places anymore, but I would buy 2 Whoppers and 2 large orders of fries and a chocolate milkshake. And I would polish those off and I would come back to work. I would finish my day. I would go home, and an average dinner for me would be a pound of steak, a mashed potato with a lot of butter in it, and a can of corn. That was an average day. And then if I was still hungry in the evening, and I was eating so much, I was always hungry, I could easily go out to Baskin Robbins and order a pint of ice cream and finish off the pint in one sitting. And that was my calories for one day. Can you imagine? Now, I was 5 feet tall, So I gained 35 pounds in 3 months. And so by the time I had gotten to my mother's house, when she had invited me for dinner, because I lived out of the house, and she had planned what was basically my favorite meal, by the time that I went to her and then she was going to serve me this meal and she saw me, she was, oh my gosh, I had gone from being fat to really obese. So it was just insane. It was, my mother was mortified that I had gotten so big in such a short period of time. So that's a little bit of history. And by the way, please look below and like and subscribe to my channel so that you can follow me and get more information. And at that point, now at 23, and I'd gained all this weight so quickly, and it just was really overnight. And a friend of mine had this neighbor across the street who I barely knew. I knew who she was, but she wasn't a friend of mine or anything. And she had quit smoking, and she was overweight, and she went on a diet at the same time she quit smoking, and she lost weight. And I don't know, I had no connection to this woman other than she was my friend's neighbor. And I thought to myself, if she could do it, I could do it. And I don't know why I thought that. She wasn't like this weak person that I thought, well, if she could do it, I could do it. I don't know why that connected for me. But it happened at the same time that I had gone to my gynecologist for this routine exam, and the doctor said to me, you're gonna die. If you do not take this weight off, you are not going to live much longer. And between those two things, the doctor saying, you're not going to live much longer, and this woman who I barely knew quitting smoking and losing this weight, something snapped in me. And on March 3rd of 1978, after I was smoking 3 packs a day, and I remember a friend of mine who I had visited in Florida, he would say to me, you buy cartons at a time. And I used to buy 4 cartons of cigarettes at a time because I never wanted to be without a cigarette. He said, you will never quit, because when you buy cartons, that means you're never going to quit. And on March 3rd, 1978, in Connecticut, we had a blizzard. And I ran out of the last cigarette, of the last pack, of the last carton. And we were supposed to go out and celebrate a friend of mine, one of my best friend's birthdays. And he was someone I'd known all of my life. He was like my big brother. He was only 2 years older than me, but he was like my big brother. We were very close friends, and still are to this day. And he and his wife and my husband and I were very close. He lives far away, but we still keep in touch. We go to each other's kids' weddings, blah, 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 all this other stuff. And it was his birthday. And if I was 23, he was 25. And I said, if I cannot go celebrate his birthday, I can't go get a pack of cigarettes. And people in my apartment building were coming to my door to look for cigarettes because they knew I always had cigarettes. So on that day, I had my last cigarette. That was it. I was done. So, of course, the natural thing would be, if you're quitting smoking, you're going to gain weight. But because of this woman, and I can't even remember her name, but she lived across the street from an old friend of mine who I could remember their names, but I said, I'm going on a diet. And I did. I said, that's it. I am no longer smoking, and I'm going to lose weight. And I went on a diet. I don't remember which diet was at that time, because those were when I was like on every diet that came along, you know, all of the different names with all of the different programs and all the different plans, and I'm gonna go on a diet. And that's what I did. I quit smoking, and I haven't smoked since that day. That was my last cigarette I ever had, and it took me 1.5 years to get over the craving for cigarettes. I worked in a very small office with one other man who was the nicest man in the universe. And it was an all-male dominated industry, and I was the first female in that industry at 23, and I had this wonderful man to work with, and he taught me everything. He was wonderful, and he had to breathe in my secondhand smoke on a daily basis in this small office. It took me 1.5 years to stop reaching for a cigarette. I would walk out of the office and down the stairs to the cigarette machine to reach for, to go buy cigarettes, and I'd go, oh, I don't smoke anymore. And it took a year and a half to stop doing that. That's how long it took me to break the habit of smoking, to stop reaching for a cigarette, 1.5 years. But I was also, I stopped, I went on a diet and I lost weight. And I went from 241 pounds, and I don't remember how, I think I lost about 65 pounds on whatever diet I was on at the time. And I probably gained back half of that at the time. And that was part of the yo-yo. And that was the beginning of the major yo-yo. But I listened to that doctor, and I listened to my little voice in the head that said, if she could do it, I could do it. And that was the beginning of my yo-yo dieting, of starting to get off of that huge weight loss. And there's more to come. And I hope you will like and share and subscribe to Just Ask Sherry. You can email me at justaskSherry@gmail.com. And Sherry is spelled SHERRIE. And I hope to see you more in the future. Thank you so much for coming on to my channel.